Appwrite webhooks allow you to build integrations which subscribe to certain events on Appwrite. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can implement Appwrite webhooks using Appwrite Cloud Functions. Whenever an event is triggered, a POST request with a JSON payload is sent to the webhook URL that is configured for the specific webhook. You can use these webhooks to perform some calculations, send Slack notifications, or pretty much anything else you want. Validating webhooks in Appwrite is crucial to ensure incoming requests to your application's endpoints are genuinely from Appwrite instance and not from malicious sources. This validation helps prevent unauthorized access and potential security breaches. So why should we validate webhooks? Because without validation, anyone aware of your webhook URL could send fabricated or malicious data to your backend. This could lead to unauthorized actions such as creating fake sessions, altering database entries, and in general compromising the integrity and security of your application. So how are we going to validate the webhook in Appwrite? Appwrite includes a special header in each webhook request. This header contains the HMAC SHA1 signature of the payload, which you can use to verify the request's authenticity. It requires two components: the webhook URL and the payload in a stringified format. So what we are going to do in the function that we are going to create is retrieve the signature key and generate a signature that we will then use to compare to the Appwrite webhook signature that we received in the headers. If they match, the payload is authentic and originated from an Appwrite instance, and we can trust it. So with no further ado, let's get started. Before we create the webhook, we need to create the Appwrite function. And the reason why we need the function is because we are going to use its URL as the target for the webhook to send the request to. So let's go on the left-hand side to Functions, and then press on the Create Function button. Click on the All Starter Templates, and then click on the Create Function again. And here we can name our function to be Webhook Function. And then we can choose the runtime, which in this case is going to be Bun 1.1 because it supports TypeScript right out of the box. And then we have to press next here, and it's going to ask me if I want to update some of the permissions. These permissions are fine by default. Going to press next again. And then for the deployment, I'm going to connect later because I don't want to do a Git integration at the moment. And finally, I can press create, and this will create Appwrite function. Now that we created a function, we do have the function URL right here, which is all that we need for our webhook. So I'm going to copy the function URL. I'm going to the settings on the bottom left-hand side of the Appwrite console. I'm going to press on settings, then move over to webhooks, and then click on create webhook here. And then I'm going to enter a name for the webhook, which can be just test-webhook. And I'm going to paste the POST URL here because this is the function URL that we are going to reach out when we trigger the webhook. I might need to add just HTTPS at the front, and then I can press next, and then I can choose an event that will trigger the function. There are plenty of events, and you can have also multiple events for that particular webhook that will trigger that particular function. So if I press the plus button here, I can choose various types of services. But in our case, what we're going to do, which is something very easily testable, is choose users and also choose create. So upon creation, the webhook should be triggered. And what the webhook will do is it will send that particular user's payload to the function URL that we have specified. I'm going to show you how the function will work, and we are also going to write some code for it in just a minute. So we just need to create the webhook. I'm going to press create here for the event. I'm going to press next, and it's asking me for security. Now, you can always choose to have HTTP authentication, but in our case, that's not necessary because we are going to validate each and every request by signing off the webhook. So I'm going to press create here, and that will create our webhook. So the next step is now to pull the function into our code base and start writing some code that will allow us to handle those webhook requests. Now let's head over to the code base, and I'm going to assume that you have already set up your Appwrite project in the IDE. So given that assumption, I'm going to go ahead and type Appwrite pull function, which is going to type Y to pull the source code of the latest deployment. And if I check on the left hand side in the functions, I will see that I do have the webhook-function and I've got the source code inside main.ts. This is the boilerplate, so we are going to update this code to be able to handle the webhook requests. So now we have to install the dependencies that are required by this function. And then we also need to install Appwrite as just a dependency. And if we head back to the code base, we can see now that there's no errors or warnings. And if we open the package.json file, we can see that we do have Appwrite and types bun installed in our dependencies. Now that we have done that, we can go back to the main.ts file and we can delete most of this boilerplate that has been generated for us. I'm going to remove these comments right over here as well. And I'm going to start with creating an interface for the webhook request headers because it doesn't come packed with the Node Appwrite library. So this is something that you have to add manually. So if you want, you can pause the video, you can go to the GitHub link that I have in the description, and you can copy paste the interface that you can see here. And we are going to use this interface for the webhook request headers, and we are going to create one more interface for the webhook request body. So for the second one, I'm going to type interface webhook request body, and it's going to extend models. Now, models is an important class because it contains the type definitions for the user event triggers that will be sent as a payload through the webhook. So I'm going to go ahead and import models from Appwrite, and this is where we need the normal Appwrite, the client Appwrite library. And here I'm going to go back to the interface and I'm going to extend models.user, and I'm going to add a generic that contains the preferences of the user. And finally, there's two more elements to that particular event. One is called targets, and it's of type models.target, and it's an array of targets. And also we do have the accessed at string, which is the timestamp during which this resource was accessed at. Now that we've created these interfaces, we can use them in the function's main code. So if we go back down here, we can actually create a new constant called headers, and we're going to assign this to be the rec.headers. Now, because there's no type definitions from the actual library, and since we've created the interface already, we can just type as webhook request headers, and that means we can access headers dot. And then we can access all these attributes that we know do exist on the rec.headers object. And we can do the same for the body. So we can type const data is rec.bodyJSON as webhook request body. Now that we have instantiated these two constants, we can use them to validate the webhook. What we need for validating the webhook is a payload, a signature key, the webhook signature, and the webhook URL. And we can write a function to do all that. So let's begin by creating a new function called Validate Webhook. And it's going to take a few parameters, a few arguments. One of them is payload, and it's going to be a string because we are going to stringify the data object that we receive within the request object for the function. And we need to stringify it because it's going to form part of the validation string that we're going to compare against the webhook signature. We also need the actual signature key. So I'm going to create a signature key parameter. We need the webhook signature that we're going to pass in as an argument, and the webhook URL, which is the endpoint value that we have defined when creating the webhook in Appwrite console. So this function is going to return a Boolean, and within here we have to create a signature that will comprise of the signature key, SHA-1 HMAC encryption, that was going to be converted into base 64, and that value is going to be compared against the webhook request signature. And if those two values match, then that means the webhook request is authentic, it's a real one, and not an imposter sending a request to the endpoint. So to do that, we're gonna have to import the crypto library. So I'm going to type import all as crypto from crypto. And crypto is a node library, so you should be able to access it without having to install any additional libraries. And let's go back down to the validate webhook function, and let's define a constant called signature, we're just going to use the crypto library and we're going to create an HMAC algorithm encryption. It's going to be of type SHA-1 algorithm, and we're going to pass the signature key inside, as well as we want to update using the webhook URL that we have defined in the Appwrite console appended to the actual payload. So it's going to look like HTTPS, and we're going to have the webhook URL inside here and the payload, which is a stringified value of a JSON object. We're going to digest the input and convert it to string of type base64 encoding. And finally, we need to just compare this signature with the webhook signature. So return signature strictly equals webhook signature, depending on whether or not. Now, all we have to do is just call the function, check if it returns true. If so, we can send a response that everything went well. Otherwise, if the signature does not match with what is expected validated signature, then we are going to return a negative response. And in both cases, we are going to log the error or the success in the internal logging system. So let's go ahead and write an if statement. If validate webhook, and we're going to pass in the stringified JSON data that we have defined above. So JSON stringified data. And we are also going to pass the signature key that we are going to define in the environment variables just in a minute. So bun.env, and we're going to say webhook underscore signature underscore key. We're going to pass the headers, which contains the signature of the webhook that we want to validate against. So x-appwrite webhook-signature. And finally, we need to pass the headers host. And now, if this is true, then we can return rest.json. And we're going to pass the message webhook validated. And we can also log internally that everything went well. So we can say webhook validated here as well. Otherwise, we need to throw an error. We can throw an error internally into our logging system. We'd say webhook not validated. And we can copy the same message and we can return the value in res.json message webhook not validated. And that's pretty much it. So we just have to copy the webhook signature from the Appwrite console and add it to a .env file. So we just have to copy the webhook signature key from the Appwrite console and paste it to the functions environment variables. So in order to do that, head back to the Appwrite console, copy the signature key, then go on the left-hand side to the functions, choose your function, click on settings, scroll down to the place where the environment variables are, and then press on create a variable to get started. You can paste the value here. So just double confirm that's the correct value you've pasted. And then for the key, we're going to type webhook underscore signature underscore key. And I'm going to click create. And that is going to create an environment variable for the scope of this particular function. Now that we are done with this step, all we have to do is go back to the IDE and then go to your terminal and type appwrite push function. Select your function, and this is going to push the function to the cloud with the code that we already have written. The function is now deployed, which means we can go ahead and test if it works. And the way we are going to do that is by heading back to Appwrite console again, then scrolling to the top where we can see the sidebar on the left side. We're going to click on auth, and we're going to create a new user. So I'm going to press create user. I'm going to type my name. I'm going to type my email and just a random password. It doesn't matter what kind of password it is. I'm going to press create, and that should create a user. But at the same time, it should trigger a webhook, which is going to send a request to our function. So let's head over to the functions, click on the webhook function, then go to executions, and you will see that there was an execution complete just a few seconds ago. Now, if we press on the three dots here, we can check the logs. And in the logs, we can see that the webhook has been validated. So that's pretty much it when it comes to the steps for the webhook. If you found this tutorial useful, make sure to subscribe for more tutorials like this and leave a like and a comment in case you have feedback. and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good day.